So, you might remember this episode that we made about the Cambodian incursion. Let's watch a little preview, shall we?
I don't know if you noticed, but there's been a lot of talk about wars recently. But today I'll just be talking about one type of war, and you'll probably guess which war I'm talking about. Here, let me give you a clue. Good enough? Well, if you haven't guessed it, you're probably a dum-dum.
Sorry about the rudeness, but you also probably remember seeing this photo. These are all photos of battle scenes during the Vietnam War. And it's probably one of the scariest wars that ever happened after World War II. But then, how did all that happen? How did all of this happen, and what war are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the Vietnam War. Let's get this course of Hunter John started. So, the Vietnam War, also known by other names, was a conflict between Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia from the 1st of November of 1955 all the way to April 30th of 1975, which lasted for 19 years, 5 months, and 4 weeks, and 1 day. That's significant. To the fall of Saigon on 30th of April of 1975. It was also the second of the Indochina Wars, and it was officially fought between the North Vietnamese and the South Vietnamese. South Vietnamese? There we go. So it's the North vs the South. The North was supported by the Soviet Union and China and other communist states, while the South, Vietnam, was supported by the United States and other anti-communist allies. And the war is widely considered to be a Cold War era proxy war. And it lasted almost 20 years, with direct U.S. involvement ending in 1973. 1973, with U.S. direct involvement ending in 1973. And the conflict was almost spilled over. Actually, it was also spilled over into the neighboring states, exacerbating the Laotian Civil War and the Cambodian Civil War, which ended with all three countries becoming communist states by 1975. So I know that was a lot of information for you in just a few minutes. So let me basically expand it for you guys. This guy, named Ho Chi Minh, you probably know him. His real name, according to JohnKerry and Crash Course US History, is Win Sing Kong. I also have my doubts. And he basically took over Vietnam a lot with communism. And the USA was feared of they were afraid of the domino effect. And so that's one of the reasons why I guess they didn't really even like to even think about what would happen. And so Ho Chi Minh really wanted to expand the war into the southern parts. But then the Geneva Conference happened, and then they decided that Vietnam would at least currently be divided along this line, the 17th parallel, splitting the Vietnam into the north and the south. Ho Chi Minh wanted to go to the south and attack, but his allies in China actually convinced Ho Chi Minh that he could win the South by electoral means. When the elections came up, though, the election was obviously rigged because there were only 450,000 people who were registered in the election, but then they had more than that. The votes were more than that. It was obviously voter fraud. And during this time, JFK, the first JFK, not JohnKerry JFK, instead, JFK decided that he thought that containing communism is a good thing. You can't eradicate communism, that's impossible, but you can contain it, at least in theory. And so JFK thought that Vietnam was a good place where he can make a stance. And then he passed it along to LBJ. And then LBJ decided that he would send American troops into Vietnam after they realized that American support through trainers and advisors and medical advisors weren't enough. Then Nixon showed up and he explained what they were gonna do. That like this. Tonight we'll be sending American troops into Cambodia. This is not an invasion of Cambodia.
Oh no.
They even bomb it, and it turns out there's more bombs that have hit in Vietnam. There were more bombs that were sent into Vietnam than there were bombs sent into sent into the Nazi Germany and all the other places, the Axis powers, and by the Allies in all of World War II. That's a big number, that's something to worry about. So the Vietnamese know that they can't win a war if they fight America in a way when they try to fight them in their way. Or at least try to. Smack! And so they decided that they won't fight like America, at least even try to. They decided that they'd be sneaky, setting booby traps and other things that can be made by anyone in Vietnam, whether you're poor or not, while the enemy was unsuspecting. And that was how booby traps were started to be created. Like this one, for example. If you tripped the wire, this would fall onto an American soldier. And the spikes, well, it can be made by anyone. It can be made from metal. But this is how it was created, normally by anyone. Sharpen a stick, and much, much more. Stick them into a ball of mud. Leave it in the sun to dry. And when it finally dries, set it up. Sometimes they coated the sharp sticks with feet, like waste products, like poo. Why would they do this disgusting feat? Well, it's because if they did this, and if a soldier got some poo inside him, infection would arise. And Vietnam is just the perfect place to have an infection, because of the wild jungle and the climate, it's the perfect place for an infection to appear if you get wounded. Another one is this. Some fake leaves or some fake ground is covering up a hole, and when an unsuspecting soldier goes up onto it, it collapses and it shoots yeah. You probably know what happens. These are probably good ideas for pranking your friends in Minecraft, but probably not a good idea to actually use them in real life. Ugh, this must have been terrifying. Also, here is one of the reasons why the USA and its allies couldn't help South Vietnam win. Because the people of North Vietnam had the knowledge of the terrain, and also propaganda made the natives actually fight for them. And also, they are also great at guerrilla attacks, the art of surprise. And yeah, when soldiers tried to go into these complexes, if they go into a false tunnel, they would actually sometimes get booby-trapped. Like so. And sometimes when they're in some, here you go, here's a trap, and sometimes here's a fighting bunker. People will climb up, go through these tunnels, get up here, and then they will wait in the grass, pretending that it's just grass, and when enemies are nearby, they would start shooting. This kind of reminds me of Tony Stark in Iron Man 1 when he's like entrapped, forced to make some weapons. These tunnels were so complex and so big, in fact, that they even had a kitchen, a dormitory, and even a schoolroom and a hospital. Hospital, guys! And they even had a well. This well is their water supply, and sometimes they would even use it for people to actually fall in. If the American soldiers tried to go through here, they will fall down into their death unless they have some iron walls to help them. And then if they do something wrong, they would fall into the water, and if they don't get up fast, they probably drown. I mean, this is a good idea for a base in Minecraft, but it's not a good idea for USA people, because it's one of the reasons why they couldn't win the war at all. And some of the farmland that used to be fertile is now considered unusable because of all of the mines and bonds that were left in there or just forgotten. They even forget to take away booby traps. I mean, these guys, they're all so warlike. It's so barbaric in my idea. I mean, all these teams, the countries are their teams. South Vietnam is supported by the US, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and others, while North Vietnam and the Viet Cong and the PRG are supported by the Phan Phan Lao, the Khmer Rouge, the Grunks, China, Soviet Union, North Korea, Albania, and others too. These are their commanders and leaders, who should probably take the blame. And these are their soldiers. The result is that Vietnamese civilians killed and dead are 405,000 to 2 million. No one is really sure. The Vietnamese total dead is 966,000 to 3,010,000. The Cambodian Civil War, during that time, the people who were killed and are dead right now are 275,000 to 310,000. The Laotian Civil War people who fought in the dead and civilians too are 20,000 to 62,000. The non-Indo-Chinese military dead were 65,494, and so the total dead were 1,326,494 to 3,447,494. And so, yeah. The result was that the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, or the PRG, had the victory, and the U.S. coalition withdrawed forces from Vietnam in 1973 after the Paris Peace Accords. The Communist forces take over South Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, and it started the boat people and refugee crisis happened during this time. And also, this was also the start of the Cambodian genocide and the Third Indochina War. That is third! Ah! And the territorial changes was the reunification of North Vietnam and South Vietnam into Social Republic of Vietnam in 1976. There was this one guy I found on YouTube who said that if no one won this war, like if Vietnam stayed on the 17th parallel, like how the South Koreans and North Koreans did after the Korean War and still stayed on their own border parallel, almost exactly where they started, would South Vietnam could have been something similar to South Korea or something? Oh, that's not my opinion. To be honest, I don't think so. But now that the war's over, sleep tight, everyone. Sleep tight. Shannon out. Peace. Special thanks to everyone who helped me research. Turns out there's only one person who did that, my mom. So special thanks to my mom for helping me create this video. And yeah, I love you, Mom. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Shannon out. Peace.